The Charleston County School Board race is heating up, especially in the West Ashley area race. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I speak exclusively with candidate Herbert S. Fielding, one-on-one. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. And listen to this interview later on iHeartRadio. Herbert Fielding.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great, actually. Good to see you again.
Yes, always.
I appreciate it. Well, it's what, less than 6 days before the campaign is over?
This is it. This is down the home stretch now.
What is it like for Herbert Fielding to be a Charleston County School Board candidate for the West Ashley area?
It's a little nerve-wracking. It's kind of fun. I mean, it is something that I have, probably aspired to all my life. I'm a political science major. And I've been involved in the community for most of my life. So being a candidate is fun, and it's work too. It's a lot of work, but I'm enjoying it.
You talk about work. When I interviewed Francis Baylon for Quintin's Close-Ups on Saturday, he basically says, hey, he's in the middle of two cortex. He basically called out the Coalition for Kids and the other group. Basically, he said the former CCSD employees.
Right.
Where are you in the middle of all of this?
I'm trying to keep myself out of a camp at this point. I want to work for the school system. I want to work for the kids. I want to produce a quality education for anybody in the county that wants to get that in a public situation. So I'm not on one side or the other. Okay. I see some things that could be changed. I think that we've gotten away from the community school that most of us grew up with. And I think that's a bad idea because, I think back on my days at Rhett and Burke. Right. The teachers knew me, they knew my parents, we were involved. Sure. And it was important that I get my lessons because it was what my future was going to be about as to what I had learned. So, now that we have taken a role where we're setting up kind of elitist schools, for only those kids that are really high achievers. What are you going to do with the masses of kids that don't make it through those kinds of schools and are not getting the kind of education that they should get in the public system?
And obviously, when I talked earlier about the West Ashley area, the city of Charleston mayor, that is, John Tettenberg, went to the school district recently and said, hey, we need some money, we need your help, with as far as flooding and whatnot.
Right.
Where are you with this discussion?
As the school system helping the city?
Yes, sir.
Well, I mean, and I don't know that they can turn their funds over because at this point in time, our school system is actually underfunded. It's not receiving. There are some monies that are going into some places that probably shouldn't be. Okay. Where there's some fat that could be cut, is what I'm saying, and put into other areas, into instruction. But I don't know that there would be a whole lot of money that the school system could lend to the city in any way. Well, I guess the product of the school system is the one thing that's important to the city as far as employees are concerned.
And obviously, when you talk about the budget, there's so much to look at. If you were in the Charleston County School Board right now, what would you leave in and what would you take out as far as the budget?
Oh boy, I think, and it's those special programs that are in the charter schools, we seem to be on this ground that we have to build a school especially to hold the charter school. So now you've taken on another drain of maintenance of a building and keeping up with the taxes and everything else on that particular property. So what I would probably do first off is to bring those special programs back into the regular community schools. And house them there so that the students don't have to go to a special school or be trucked away from the normal community school.
You talk about charter schools. When you look at that, what is the future of that in your mind?
I think it has a place. The programs are definitely good. I mean, because it's an accelerated program, oftentimes in science, technology, and mathematics, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the reality is, we've gotten off on this thing where we're ignoring the community school, because you hear of it. Garrett has got rodents in the school. Every school could take you around and show you the leaks in the ceiling, and the buildings are old. But the properties are ours. So why not rebuild them or renovate them and you know, create a more, you know, kids can be stimulated by the environment that they're in. And, you know, not like a new car, you know? So why not give them some really first-class facilities to go to school in?
And when I interviewed Francis Baylock for Quintin School Substance Sadly, we talked about the constituents' school boards. Should they stay or should they go in your mind?
I think that they should stay because there's always room for them. The constituent boards are handling a whole nother side of what, you know, the personnel side of school system. They deal with much more closely with the instructors and the principals and administrators. And they also deal with student problems, and they bring those to the board, the consolidated board. The consolidated board has its own hands, you know, tied in the fact that it's running a $1 billion project. And, you know, there's an enormous amount of people to manage and an enormous amount of funding and different day-to-day operational things that need to occur, and that's what the consolidated board handles. So I think that constituent boards are good. They probably need to be paid more attention to than they are. They need to be listened to when they tell you that something is wrong in the school system, then the consolidated board needs to take a look and see what it can do to correct those problems.
And if you were to be elected on the consolidated school board, what would you do day one?
I've always said that my first effort is to attack the problem of student-teacher ratio, which leads to this problem of 67% of the students not being on grade level as far as reading are concerned. And I think that reading is it is extremely important because you can't learn if you can't read. Yeah, I don't know how you learn if you can't read. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And you know, the one other thing that I keep saying is that we need to contract SLED or some kind of security agency to look at each school property and make recommendations with respect to the long-term security of those properties from the standpoint of someone intruder coming in and doing some kind of damage.
What is the state of security when you think of the Charleston County School District?
You know, you can walk in any school in Charleston County almost. I mean, you can. The doors aren't, frequently the external doors are not locked. Or even if there is a door or a fence around the property, there's an open front door where you can just walk in and there's nobody there. Now the governor is going to put an armed person in each property. That's a double-edged sword. As we have seen what happened in Columbia with respect to an armed officer who, I think he overstepped his boundaries with that student that he tossed around the room.
Oh, Richland County.
Richland County, yes. The armed officers, a single armed officer is not the solution to the problem. The problem is really in the entrance and egress. You cannot go into the courthouse without a check,
right.
A complete check.
Right.
You should be the same way in a school. And unless you're a student with an ID. Now, some students are the ones that are doing this damage, so there needs to be metal detectors in some way. Entrance and egress needs to be through a security gate.
And you talk about students. Let me get back to your discussion about student-teacher ratio. What should that be ideally?
Well, from what it looks like, it appears that if the ratio is 20 students to one teacher or less, there's a much increased success rate in the classroom. Or if the student-teacher ratio is changed by the fact that there is an assistant teacher to help the main teacher, then that in and of itself reduces the student-teacher ratio, and it makes for better instruction at the student level.
And if you were to tour West Ashley area school right now, which one would you go to?
I went to West Ashley High School.
Okay.
And I was very impressed at the school because it is 50-50 almost in demographics.
Sure.
It has special programs. It has a very devoted and assertive administrator. And he is, as I walked around with him, his students are quite comfortable with him, and the instructors are. So it is an example of a very, very good school at this point in time, and I would hope that could be duplicated on other campuses. It also has a very good security system in that school. You don't really see it, but it's there. You can't really get into the school itself. You can get into the front door, but once you're in the front door, you have to be admitted to any of the academic areas or even administrative areas.
Herbert Fielding, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate this.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Anytime.